Build discipline by challenging yourself intentionally. Many Americans have really low levels of self-discipline precisely because they have made their lives as comfortable as possible. In fact, if you were to look at the typical ad shown on primetime TV in the United States, a recurring pattern appears. The ad would tell you about a product or a service that would make your life so much more convenient, easy, and simple. That is the promise, and people fall for this promise time and time again, and, for the most part, these are the cardinal values of modern American life. It's all about convenience. After all, we live in a society where we want our pizza in 15 minutes, or we expect it to be absolutely free. Well, here's the problem. When you set an easy life for yourself, it only takes a very small amount of challenge for you to get totally thrown off track. You can't handle it. You can't withstand even the softest challenge, and this is precisely why a lot of kids nowadays have a tough time with discipline. We have gone soft. Well, if you want to build discipline, tighten things up a bit. Make it a little harder on yourself. Here are some basic day-to-day practical ways to challenge yourself on both a mental and physical level. These go hand in hand. You may be thinking that these are just physical challenges, but they also challenge you mentally. They can toughen you up mentally and emotionally, so you are more likely to put up with a lot more inconveniences. Take cold showers. Make it a point to use only cold water when taking a shower. I know this might seem masochistic, but there's a hard logic to this. When you take a cold shower first thing in the morning, you wake up quickly. Second, you don't extra time in the shower. It quickly turns into a rapid in and out situation. You know that it's going to be cold. So, you soap up, you clean up, and you rinse off very quickly. In other words, you save a tremendous amount of time. Also, when you take cold showers, it enables you to focus mentally. You're not thinking about something else. You're not letting your emotions get the better of you. You're not suffering from any form of brain fog. Instead, you just want to start your shower and get out of there as soon as possible. You remain focused. This is a great way to start your day. This also toughens up your personal discipline because it would have been so much easier to take a nice, warm shower. Wake up really early. How early? How about 4 o'clock or even 3 o'clock in the morning? Wake up as early as you can. When you wake up early, you actually tap into a tremendous amount of physical energy. Put this to good use by pairing it with some sort of daily morning exercise. When you wake up early, you are able to focus more clearly. The downside, of course, is that your body is going to put up a fight. This is where you build discipline. Let's face it, if given a choice, most people would rather keep clicking the snooze button on their alarm clocks. In fact, most people would rather stay in bed for hours on end. When you wake up really early, you challenge this part of your mindset. You commit to waking up by a certain time. It doesn't matter whether you woke up on the right side of the bed. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It doesn't matter whether things are lined up properly. None of that matters. What matters is that when the clock says 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., you commit to waking up on time every time. This is a great way of using physical discipline to build up mental discipline and vice versa, because they actually reinforce each other. You end up in a situation where even if you're feeling really tired and sleepy, you still get up because you're mentally disciplined. Some days you don't really feel like it, but your body has gotten so used to this routine that it wakes you up. So, set this process in motion by choosing to wake up really early morning after morning, week after week, months after month, year after year. Park farther and farther from the entrance. I know this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, especially with readers from California. In states like California, people have the luxury of huge parking lots. As you can well imagine, if you are going to Walmart or Costco, your number one instinct will be to find a parking slot that is as close to the entrance as possible. To build self-discipline, I want you to overcome and reverse this common mindset. Instead of driving around in circles trying to spy out a parking spot near the entrance that just opened up, make it a point to look at the farthest point of the parking lot and try to park as close to it as possible. At first, you probably would only park a few more extra yards away from the main entrance of the mall. That's fine. However, as the weeks go by, make it a point to park farther and farther away from the entrance. This should apply across the board. It doesn't matter whether you're going to Costco, to your office, or to some sort of sports venue. Exercise this. At first, it's going to be a hassle because you're used to looking for the nearest parking spot, but eventually, you'll get used to this. Eventually, you will see that when you park really far, you get to exercise and you get to see the venue from a different perspective. You start to see the big picture. This can go a long way in totally changing your mindset. Reduce your snacks. Some people pretty much snack throughout the day. It doesn't matter whether you have more than 3 snacks or you only have 1. Make it a point to start dialing down the amount of snacks you enjoy every single day. For example, if you eat 3 major meals a day with snacks in between or a snack in the beginning and a snack at the end, you may be dealing with about 5 snacks per day. Dial that down to 4. Get used to it. Once it feels natural and it becomes part of your routine, dial it down again to 3. Repeat the same process. Get it down to 2, then to 1, then to 0. It can be done, and it really all boils down to getting used to the process. You also get the additional benefit of losing weight, because if you snack on sugary drinks, chances are the insulin peaks and crashes that you experience basically makes you hungry throughout the day. If you were to get off that insulin treadmill, you can reduce your overall calorie intake day after day. Commit to reading a certain amount of words daily. A lot of people think that they read enough materials every single day. Unfortunately, these are just all estimates. They're basically just going with their moods. If you really want to become more disciplined, you have to put yourself on a hard quota regarding the amount of words you read every single day. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to be a hero. Start with 1,000 extra words. This is basically just 4 pages of a typical hardbound book. Once that becomes comfortable, step it up to 1,500, then 2,000. Eventually, you should make it a point to read one 200-page book every week. You may be thinking that this is a lot, but if you went to college, you know that this is actually nothing because in many courses, you're expected to read 4 or 5 full books every single week. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pages. So, get up to 1 full book per week, then try to double it after a few months, then try to double that after a few months. Not only would this build up your practical levels of discipline, but it also helps ensure you become a more knowledgeable person. Your conversations become more interesting. You also get to deepen your personal knowledge and expertise. Why is this important? Well, we live in a modern, information-based economy. The more information you have that other people don't possess, the more credible you become. This can translate into bigger paychecks and greater economic opportunities. Build discipline through daily opportunities. In addition to your existing routine, you should also look for opportunities to practice discipline. In fact, if you're really honest with yourself, these opportunities are all over the place. You don't have to look far. Here are just some of the things that happen on a day-to-day basis that you can choose to be more disciplined about. Daily occurrences. Did you know that if you experience hunger, it can be an opportunity to practice discipline? As long as you stick to your meal plan, if you feel hunger in between your set meal times, you can choose to ignore those hunger pangs. You can choose to power through them. At first, this is almost impossible. It feels like murder, but, eventually, you will get used to it. The best part? You get to lose weight, you look better, and you feel better about yourself, all thanks to discipline. Next, if you find yourself waiting in line, maybe you're at the bank or you're at the DMV, this can also be a great time to practice discipline. You don't have to waste your time waiting in line. It doesn't have to be dead time. You can whip out a tablet and try to do some work. You can read a book and improve your mind and personal knowledge. There are just so many ways you can turn what would otherwise be dead time spent waiting for something or someone into something more productive. You can use this to practice discipline. The opposite of this, of course, is to wait in line impatiently. The more impatient you feel, the less disciplined you become. Next, you might want to take special assignments at work. As you probably already know, your boss has no shortage of stuff that needs to get done. Volunteer for more of these projects. I know it's not all that convenient, but the good news is the more you do these, the more you get used to them. Also, you step up your skill levels, and you become more valuable to your boss. At first, it may seem like you're just doing mindless chores, but, eventually, you stand out from the rest of your team. You are the go-to person that your boss can tap when things need to get done. You also end up exposing yourself to higher levels of responsibility. It's only a matter of time until you get promoted or get a raise. If neither of those things happens, take comfort from the fact that you picked up more skill sets, which you can take to your next employer. Finally, you can practice discipline by just simply hanging out with toxic friends. These are people who are constantly bitching and groaning about life. These are people who are complaining about their relationships or lack thereof. These are people who are projecting a tremendous amount of negativity. You may be thinking to yourself, why would I want to spend a moment more with these people, considering how toxic they are? Well, guess what? Your normal inclination is to just leave them alone, but that doesn't build discipline. When you make it a point to just hang out and listen to people and possibly guide them to solutions, you become more resistant to toxic, emotional situations. You're able to put up with a lot more things. You're less likely to get emotional. This can pay off tremendously in how you deal with other people. Discover coping mechanisms. When you're building self-discipline, you're not just powering through unpleasant situations. You're not just choosing to take it all on the chin. You're also putting yourself in a situation to discover coping mechanisms. For example, if you are working out because you're trying to be more physically disciplined, you can figure out a way to read by listening to audiobooks. When you're running first in the morning, you can play mind games with yourself to keep you mentally alert. If you are at work going through what would otherwise be thoughtless and mindless tasks, you can gamify them so they are more engaging. You're also setting yourself up to become more efficient with this work, and you might be able to automate more things or come up with some innovative solutions so as to do a lot more with less time. Finally, you can learn to simply look at the bright side. This is probably one of the best coping mechanisms you could ever adopt. Instead of automatically thinking that there is no hope, this is the worst thing possible, or you just can't wait to stop dealing with these difficult people, you can force yourself to look at the bright side of every situation. For example, if you're dealing with a toxic person, in your mind, celebrate what's great about them. The toxic aspects of their personality may be obvious, but when you make it a point to focus on what's so awesome about them, you're not only able to put up with them, but you can deepen your relationship as well. Identify the times you wish to quit. Let's face it, if you try to be more disciplined, the temptation to want to quit is going to come up again and again. Instead of just dealing with this on a random basis, try to look for patterns. Figure them out. Once you notice that they do come in certain patterns or they're triggered by certain predictable events, people, or situations, learn how to counteract them. Maybe you need to adopt a certain attitude when these things happen, or perhaps you need to adopt a certain routine. Finally, you can just choose to wait them out. Whatever the case, maybe don't just let a sense of hopelessness overcome you and push you to quit. Instead, anticipate that and prepare for them so you can come out on top. Track and monitor your personal discipline journey. A lot of the tips that I have given you here involve your mind. They also involve your daily routine. Unfortunately, if you were to go on your personal discipline building journey based solely on what you're feeling or your moods or what you committed to, you may be setting yourself up for failure. Please understand that if you really want to become more disciplined in an efficient and effective way, you have to track your progress. At the very least, you have to monitor what you do on a day-to-day basis when confronted with certain stimuli. This enables you to connect the dots better. This enables you to detect patterns in a more efficient way, which can lead to better coping mechanisms and improved solutions. It's hard to stay on top of all that if you're just keeping it all in your head. Start a discipline journal. Get it all down in writing. This doesn't mean that you have to write a novel like Dostoevsky. You don't have to do that. There's no need to overdo things. You can start low and slow. Maybe just a few lines every day. Eventually, you will get so used to tracking your progress that you probably would write longer and longer entries. Don't think that you have to start with long entries. There's no need for such massive journal entries. As long as you get a clear idea when you look at your journal as where you started, what you experienced, and how you can overcome your challenges, you're in a good spot. Scale up your entries and detail. The good news about keeping a journal is that it feels like you're engaged in a dialogue with yourself. This personal conversation gets deeper and more interesting over time. This is due primarily to the fact that you get used to writing a journal. Once this has become second nature to you, allow yourself to get more and more detailed over time. Eventually, once you have made this part of your routine, you can write really detailed journal entries that can help you achieve breakthroughs as far as your coping mechanisms go. Maybe you're hanging on to a very negative mindset. Perhaps you believe in uncertain limiting beliefs that actively get in the way of you improving your personal discipline. Build greater self-control using a system. In this chapter, I want to open your mind to the concept of system building. The problem with building discipline really boils down to consistency, constancy, and feedback. While keeping a journal can definitely go a long way in helping you monitor whatever solutions you have come up with over time, it's simply not going to be enough. While a journal can do a good job of helping you compare where you are from where you started as far as your self-discipline level is concerned, you need to be more proactive. You need to adopt a pattern of behavior as well as a pattern of thinking that pretty much sustains itself. Let's be honest here. If you're reading this book, at this point in time, you're really pumped up about getting more discipline. Maybe you have a clear understanding of the benefits of this trait. Perhaps you were trying to get yourself out of a difficult situation. The problem is once you start building self-discipline, it's very easy to lose track. It's very easy to just let your emotions get the better of you. Maybe your work shift changes. Perhaps your relationships go through some turbulence. Whatever the case may be, you get thrown off track. You may not be as passionate or as energized before. Before you know it, your efforts at building self-control and discipline go down the tubes. In other words, your personal journey starts to look more and more like how people tackle diets. If you've ever gone on a diet, you should know exactly what I'm talking about. In the beginning, you're all excited to avoid certain types of foods. You stick to your meal plan. However, sooner or later, all sorts of details from your personal life kind of throw you off track. You start thinking that maybe I can cheat for one day, and that cheat day turns to a cheat week, which quickly turns into a cheat month, and, before you know it, you're off your diet. The same applies to building self-discipline. You can't just play it by ear. This is why I suggest that you build a system. When you use a system, you tap into a personal mechanism that is more sustainable. Also, you tap into a way of doing things that can be broken up and diagnosed in modules. You don't have to either accept it wholesale or throw it away wholesale. You can break it up. You can mix and match and drop things that don't work for you. Moreover, when you act in a systematic way, you produce more predictable results. You're more likely to get the outcome that you expect. Setting up your own system framework. First, let me begin with the bad news. The bad news is I cannot just cram my personal discipline building system down your throat. This doesn't work on a one-size-fits-all, cookie-cutter basis. What may work for me may not necessarily work for you, because we all have different sets of personal circumstances. After all, we all come from different backgrounds, and we have different experiences. You have to account for all those differences. This is why I'm just going to suggest a framework, and then you fill it in based on what's going on in your life as well as your experiences. First, you need to adopt a tracking system. This is your journal. Start out slow and low, but, eventually, stick to common daily parameters when doing your journal. Next, you have to adopt some sort of process. This is a multi-month plan. You have to hold yourself accountable by setting up targets. Say to yourself, now, I eat 3,000 calories a day. Once a certain amount of months pass, I can get that down to 2,500 or 2,000 inch, so on and so forth. Use such multi-month plans for discipline building in different areas of your life. Also, make it a point to actively identify and seek discipline building opportunities every single day. When you look at your daily routine, see where those opportunities typically occur and make full use of them. Constantly challenge yourself. You can even set up your daily tasks reorganized along your discipline goals. This is how you build a system that sustains itself and scales up results over time. This is also how you hold yourself accountable. The chances of quitting decrease dramatically if you are using a discipline building system. Scale up systematically. By this point, you should be getting used to acting in a more disciplined way. You should be doing the things that you need to do that are absolutely crucial to your success. You have probably gotten over your fear or insecurity about the things that you normally would stay away from. Congratulations. But the problem is you can't become a disciplined person by choosing to practice self-control once in a while or most of the time. You're going to have to do it all the time. This sounds impossible, but with the right system, you can get there sooner rather than later. By this point, it should already be clear to you that scaling up discipline is all about stepping up when things have become easy. For example, maybe you used to park right next to the entrance at your local grocery store. After a few weeks, you may have managed to park fairly far away. This is great, but you shouldn't stop there. Things may be comfortable at this point. You may be thinking that this is a comfortable distance, and you're taking your time, parking at the farthest point away from the entrance. When you scale up systematically, you focus on when things get easy. Believe me, walking from where you parked now to the front door of your corner grocery store would have been unthinkable a few months or weeks ago. Now you're able to do it, and it seems easy. Well, this is precisely the point where you scale up. Once things want to become easy, you then scale up and decide to park farther and farther away. Your cue is when things become easy. Unfortunately, if you're just going with your hunches, you probably will end up sabotaging yourself, become impatient one day and backslide. You will find yourself where you started. To keep things going, you need to scale up systematically. How do you do this? First, you need to scale up intensity. In the case of parking farther and farther away from the entrance, keep parking further away. Go for the halfway point now and the farthest parking slot from the entrance. Once you've gotten comfortable with that, pick the next. Then ultimately, you will reach the farthest point from the entrance. This also applies to workout. Maybe you are lifting 10-pound weights. Increase the intensity of your workouts by stepping up the number of repetitions you do. Next, scale up the weight of the dumbbells and bars you are lifting. When you are practicing discipline with food, you may want to increase the number of foods you choose not to eat. For example, if you started out by consciously avoiding bread, rice, mashed potatoes, or any other high-carbohydrate food item, you might want to increase the number of foods you're staying away from. Similarly, if you are practicing discipline by reading lots of books, try to increase intensity by reading more difficult books. These are fairly easy to find. Lots of books out there take a lot of effort to read. Add a few more of those titles to your weekly reading list. Get used to them. Once you become comfortable with them, add more titles. Finally, if you are trying to step up your personal discipline by hanging out with toxic people, spend more time with very difficult people. People who are very hostile and with bad attitudes, and overcome your personal reservations against them. Sometimes you have to immerse yourself with really problematic people to achieve a breakthrough. You also might want to scale up volume. If you are trying to practice discipline by reading, increase your word count. If you are at 10,000 words per week, once things have settled down and you have gotten used to reading that many words, step it up to maybe 15,000 or even 20,000. It all depends on what you're comfortable with. Also, if you are hanging out with very difficult people, increase the amount of time you spend with them. This goes a long way in helping you control your emotions and help you become a less reactive person. Scale up scheduling. If you're using your current daily schedule to become a more disciplined person, you can scale things up by sticking to a narrower window to an hour time frame in which to cheat. People are able to stick to a fixed schedule because they have a fairly wide window of when to show up or when to do certain things. You can scale up the discipline that you're getting from your daily schedule by narrowing this window. Previously, you needed to be somewhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. You can narrow that between 4:40 to 5 o'clock, then scale it up to 4:50 and 5 p.m. The bottom line here is quite simple. You need to increase your discipline and patience by constantly challenging. It really all boils down to knowing when to scale up. Personally, the most effective approach based on my experience is when things get easy. That's when you know you've achieved a routine. That's precisely what you need to break out of, because it's very easy to feel like you can coast. Learn to fail systematically. I know this sounds crazy, but the more you prepare for failure, the more successful you will eventually become. How? Well, it all boils down to understanding that we live in an imperfect world and that things do fall apart. The best laid plans often do not pan out as we had expected. This is all par for the course. So do yourself a favor, expect setbacks. They will happen, and there's nothing wrong with experiencing that. The good news is when the setbacks do happen, they do not have to be a disaster. You don't have to backslide to where you started before you try to improve your discipline. You don't have to quit and give up. How do you do this? Well, since you're expecting a setback and you are preparing for it, you know what to do once it happens. First, you don't give in. If you suffer some sort of setback or fall back, don't give yourself an excuse to just give up. A lot of people cheat this way. For example, if you're on a diet and you're supposed to avoid starchy foods. Well, one day, you get hit by really insufferable cravings for mashed potatoes or fried rice. So, you give in and you have yourself a big heaping bowl of fried rice, mashed potatoes, pasta, or any other food that you're not supposed to eat. You tell yourself, well, there goes the diet for this day. So, I'm going to indulge myself by eating nothing but carbs for the rest of the day, and I will get back on the program tomorrow. What do you think happens next? That's right, tomorrow never comes. Once you give in, whatever discipline you've managed to build up prior to that point starts to erode. Worst yet, it erodes very quickly. So prepare for this and tell yourself it's okay to fall off the wagon. That's fine, but do not use this as an excuse to stay off the wagon. Focus on getting back to the program as soon as possible and reducing the time you take to snap back to where you were before things fell apart. This enables you to develop a tremendous amount of tenacity, perseverance, and adaptability. Get used to snapping back until it becomes second nature. This way, even if you get hit with a really strong temptation and you can't help but give in, the next thing you do is to go back to where you were before. This way, whatever damage your cheating or failure dealt will be small or inconsequential in the big scheme of things. It all boils down to getting used to snapping back. Get so used to it that you lose any negative emotional association with it. This is no time to beat yourself up, this is no time to play emotional games with yourself. Adopt these best practices and you will be able to handle setbacks like a disciplined pro.